Frates is a correspondent for the National Journal. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
All right, Ruth, where do you stand on this? Deal or no deal?
Not no deal, but more pessimistic. I am more Ratner than Van de Heye. I'm more pessimistic than optimistic because the clock is really ticking. There's about 10 legislative days left in the year. The Politico story is right. The outlines are there, but the willingness to do it and the ability to get it done in time. I'm more disappointed than I thought I would be at this point. On the other hand, this is the moment of posturing, and so it could all come together at the last moment.
Yeah, there has
Christmas present.
There has been plenty of that. We've heard from both sides in front of the microphones. But Chris, Tim Geithner, so he's going out to talk to these leaders. What does he say, for example, in these meetings with Reid and the rest of the leaders? What's his opening line?
I think his opening line is it's dangerous to go over this cliff, and we all know that, and let's just sit down and get there. And Ruth is right. There's been a lot of posturing out there, but my reporting tells me that there are contours to a deal. I had a story in National Journal today that talked about the Senate Democrats moving a little bit on entitlements. This is a day after Dick Durbin, the Senate number 2 Democrat in the Senate, went out and said we shouldn't talk about entitlements in this fiscal cliff deal. I'm hearing from Senate leadership aides who are saying, well, it's for the Republicans' job to put entitlements on the table. We don't want to negotiate with ourselves. We don't want to put both tax increases and entitlement cuts on the table and float those first. It's up to Republicans to tell us what do they want to cut as their opening bid, and we'll come back with a counter. You can't force us to put an opening bid on entitlement cuts when we don't want any to begin with, and that's some movement. So I think even in public, there's starting to be a little bit of moving, and I think there is the ability for folks to get there.
But we do know pretty clearly, I think, that the White House thinks they have the upper hand. Here's the president from his event yesterday.
Today, I'm asking Congress to listen to the people who sent us here to serve. I'm asking Americans all across the country to make your voice heard. Tell members of Congress what a $2,000 tax hike would mean to you.
So he's got his outreach to middle-class Americans. We saw him meeting with business leaders. His event is planned for tomorrow. Very campaign-like, Ruth, and he is still using the campaign, actually. More than 1 million people responded to that survey that Obama for America put out and said they're interested in volunteering. So is part of what the president is feeling, the security he's feeling about getting the deal done the way he wants to get it done, from we the people?
Either security or arrogance, depending on your perspective. You know, the campaign never ends, and the question, and I do think it's a question, is whether the sort of get the public to weigh in here is more effective than the get in the back room and cut the deal. I would say one of the things that's very different about this negotiation than, say, the debt ceiling negotiation is, first of all, there has been an election, as the president is kind of the first one to remind people. And number two, though I think Secretary Geithner does not think going over the cliff is a good idea, I think that he, the White House, the president, are way more willing to take that risk of going over, at least for a few weeks, than they were in confronting the debt ceiling, where they felt that their leverage and negotiating space was much more constrained. And so that is why you're seeing a hardening of, to some extent, of the position on the White House side. They do think they have the upper hand.
Ruth, Chris, stand by. I want to let you know that John Boehner said, look, Tom Cole's a friend of mine, but I disagree with what he had to say. Chuck Todd's analysis, though, is that this could be great for Boehner, at least from a negotiating standpoint. Does Tom Cole play into all this?
He certainly does, Chris. I think what Tom Cole is thinking is leverage. And right now, Democrats have a lot of leverage. They can make the case to the American people that by being obstructionists, Republicans are preventing a tax cut for everyone, including the middle class. And if Republicans go along with the president on this and they lose this small battle, then they will give up the tax increases on the wealthy, which they don't want, for a big tax cut to the middle class, that takes one of the Democrats' biggest talking points off the table going into next year, and they can live to fight another day during tax reform to bring those rates down for the wealthy and continue that fight while most Americans already are enjoying their tax cut. So while it seems like a concession, it could be a strategic move by Republicans to be able to make themselves some room to come back next year in a much stronger negotiating position.
I want to bring up the other big topic, of course, that's on Capitol Hill right now, and that is Susan Rice. And the Republican opposition to her nomination for Secretary of State only seems to be growing. Take a listen to this.